Welcome to Compact Biographies from compactbiographies.com, where we tell you interesting things about interesting people in short, bite-sized episodes. Before we start, a quick announcement. A brand new podcast is joining the Compact Histories family. It's called Compact Science, and it brings you clear, straightforward explanations of science-related topics, all in the same short, bite-sized format. Look out for Compact Science wherever you get your podcasts and on compacthistories.com, launching in the next few weeks. With that being said, let's get back to the show. This is episode 240, Tina Turner. Tina Turner did not emerge quietly. From the moment her voice reached a wider audience, it carried force, urgency, and an emotional scale that seemed to exceed the limits of the song itself. It was a voice shaped by gospel call and response, by rhythm and blues grit, and by a refusal to smooth away rough edges for comfort or approval. When Tina Turner sang, she did not invite attention, she commanded it. What made her voice extraordinary was not just power, though power was unmistakable. It was elasticity. She could rasp, soar, plead, and challenge within the same phrase, often bending melody to fit emotion rather than the other way around. There was steel in it, but also vulnerability, and the tension between those qualities gave her performances their charge. Audiences sensed that this was not performance as decoration. This was survival made audible. Her physical presence reinforced that impression. Turner moved with athletic intensity, using her body as an extension of the music. Nothing about her on stage suggested restraint, yet beneath the dynamism was precision. Each movement, each pause, each shift in tempo was controlled. The result was a rare combination of abandon and discipline, freedom anchored by craft. Crucially, Turner's authority did not depend on context. She did not need elaborate staging or novelty to hold attention. Even stripped back to voice and rhythm, she dominated the space. That dominance was not arrogance, it was conviction, earned through experience long before fame arrived. This opening impression matters because it explains why Tina Turner's story cannot be reduced to hits, reinvention, or resilience alone. The force people recognized later was present from the beginning, waiting for circumstances to catch up with it. Tina Turner was born Anna Mae Bullock on the 26th of November, 1939, in Brownsville, Tennessee, and grew up in the nearby rural community of Nutbush. Life there was defined by cotton fields, church, and hard routine. Her parents were sharecroppers, and the work was relentless. Music offered respite, but it was not framed as escape. It was part of daily life, woven into worship and community rather than ambition. The instability of her childhood left a lasting mark. During the Second World War, her parents moved for work, leaving Anna Mae and her sister to live with relatives. When the family reunited later, the fractures remained. By her early teens, Anna Mae was largely on her own, moving between households and learning to rely on herself. The church became an anchor. She sang in the choir at Spring Hill Baptist Church, absorbing the discipline and emotional honesty of gospel music, where voices carried both praise and pain. In 1956, she moved to St. Louis, Missouri to live with her mother. The city exposed her to a different musical world. Rhythm and blues clubs pulsed with energy, and performers worked relentlessly, night after night. At the Manhattan Club in East St. Louis, she first encountered Ike Turner and his band, the Kings of Rhythm. Determined to sing, she took the microphone during a break and delivered a performance that stopped the room. By 1958, she was recording backing vocals, and in July 1960, she was thrust into the spotlight with the release of A Fool in Love. The song became a hit almost immediately, climbing the charts and introducing her voice to a national audience. It also marked the beginning of a life lived on the road. Touring schedules were punishing. Performances followed one another without pause, often in hostile or segregated venues, especially across the American South. The road taught Turner stamina and showmanship. She learned how to command attention in difficult rooms, how to push through exhaustion, and how to deliver consistency regardless of circumstance. It also bound her future tightly to a professional partnership that would shape the next decade of her life. Success arrived early, but it came attached to control, pressure, and expectations that left little room for personal agency. From Nutbush to the touring circuit, Turner's early years forged resilience. The road did not make her voice powerful. It taught her how to survive long enough for the world to hear it. Tina Turner's rise in the early 1960s was rapid, visible, and demanding. Following the success of A Fool in Love, the act, billed as the Ike and Tina Turner Revue, became a fixture on the American touring circuit. Hits followed, including It's Gonna Work Out Fine in 1961, and a relentless schedule of live shows that emphasized energy, choreography, and precision. On stage, the Revue projected confidence and power. Offstage, the balance of control was sharply unequal. As the act's popularity grew, so did the mechanisms that governed Turner's life. Contracts, finances, and creative decisions were tightly managed. She was expected to perform at an almost inhuman pace, often appearing multiple times a night, 6 or 7 days a week. The Revue's reputation was built on consistency. Whatever the conditions, whatever the city, the show had to be delivered at full intensity. Turner learned to treat performance as obligation as much as expression, a lesson that would later inform her independence. Tina married Ike Turner on the 29th of November, 1962, in Tijuana, Mexico, a location chosen for speed and discretion rather than celebration. By that point, the Ike and Tina Turner Revue was already an established act, and the marriage formalized a relationship that was as professional as it was personal. The ceremony itself was brief and largely private, reflecting the imbalance that already existed between public success and personal agency. For Turner, the marriage did not bring stability or partnership in the conventional sense, but bound her more tightly to a system in which control, obligation, and performance were increasingly intertwined. Success brought prestige as well as pressure. In 1966, the Revue recorded a version of River Deep, Mountain High, produced by Phil Spector, and released on the 18th of May that year. Though it underperformed in the United States initially, the song became a major hit in the United Kingdom and Europe, expanding Turner's international profile. Yet even as her voice reached new audiences, her autonomy did not expand to match it. Behind the scenes, control hardened into abuse. Turner later described a life shaped by fear, isolation, and constant surveillance. Public success masked private endurance. The demands of the Revue left little space for rest or reflection, and personal safety was often sacrificed to keep the show moving. Turner learned to compartmentalize, separating the performer the audience saw from the woman who endured the consequences. By the early 1970s, the contradiction became unbearable. The Revue continued to headline major venues and television appearances, but the cost was escalating. Turner's physical exhaustion was matched by emotional depletion. Survival became a daily calculation, balancing professional obligation against personal breaking point. What makes this period central to Turner's story is not only the scale of the success, but the strength required to endure it. She did not simply survive a controlling system. She learned its mechanics from the inside. She observed how power was exercised, how audiences responded, and how identity could be shaped or constrained by industry structures. Those observations would later become tools. This was not passive endurance, it was preparation under pressure. The years of success and control forged a performer who understood exactly what she was capable of, even when denied ownership of her own work. When the moment came to choose survival over continuation, Turner did not step into the unknown. She stepped out armed with hard-earned knowledge of what the industry took and what it could never take from her. In July 1976, Tina Turner made a decision that would redefine her life, even if it appeared at the time to end her career. After a performance in Dallas, Texas, and following a violent altercation with Ike, she left the tour abruptly and did not return, and filed for divorce almost immediately. The break was not theatrical or planned. It was urgent and necessary. Turner later recalled leaving with little more than the clothes she was wearing and a handful of credit cards, uncertain where she would sleep that night. The immediate aftermath was stark. The professional identity she had inhabited for more than a decade collapsed overnight. Venues cancelled, contracts evaporated. The machinery that had sustained her visibility now closed ranks. In an industry that rewarded continuity, disappearance looked like failure. Turner accepted that risk. Survival mattered more than momentum. In the months that followed, she rebuilt from the ground up. She stayed wherever she could, sometimes relying on friends, sometimes paying for rooms at budget hotels when work allowed. Financially, she was close to ruin. When her divorce was finalized on the 29th of March 1978, she agreed to relinquish claims to property and royalties, retaining only her stage name. It was a stark trade. Material security exchanged for autonomy. Professionally, the climb back was slow and humbling. Turner accepted work that would once have seemed unthinkable. She appeared on television variety shows, sang in hotel ballrooms, and performed cabaret-style sets in Las Vegas lounges. The audiences were smaller, the prestige was minimal, but the work was hers. For the first time, she chose her material, her presentation, and her pace. This period tested her resolve more than any moment of public success had. There were no guarantees that reinvention would succeed. Ageism, sexism, and industry memory all worked against her. She was in her late 30s, a demographic rarely marketed as a fresh start in popular music. Yet Turner approached the rebuilding process with discipline rather than desperation. She trained her voice carefully, rethought her image, and studied contemporary music without abandoning her roots. Crucially, she reframed what success meant. The goal was no longer domination of charts or venues, it was control. Each performance, no matter how small, reinforced the idea that her voice and presence did not depend on the structures she had left behind. Walking away with nothing was not an act of retreat. It was a strategic reset, carried out under extreme pressure. Turner did not step into safety. She stepped into uncertainty with intention, accepting temporary obscurity in exchange for a future that belonged to her. By the early 1980s, the idea of a major comeback for Tina Turner seemed unlikely by industry standards. She was in her 40s, working steadily, but without chart presence, and widely viewed as a legacy performer rather than a contemporary force. What altered that perception was not a sudden makeover, but a careful, disciplined return that paired modern sound with the authority she had always carried. The shift began in 1983 with her cover of Let's Stay Together, produced by Martin Ware, and released in November of that year. The recording updated her sound without sanding down its edge, performing strongly in Europe and especially in the United Kingdom. More importantly, it announced that Turner could inhabit contemporary pop and rock on her own terms. Industry attitudes followed the evidence. That change became decisive on the 29th of May 1984 with the release of Private Dancer. The album was assembled through selective collaborations rather than a single guiding aesthetic, a strategy that allowed Turner's voice and presence to unify disparate material. Singles such as What's Love Got to Do With It, released the same day, Better Be Good to Me, and the title track reframed her not as a revival act, but as a commanding modern figure. When What's Love Got to Do With It reached #1 on the Billboard Hot 100 on the 7th of July 1984, it confirmed what audiences were already sensing. At the same time, Turner's authority expanded beyond music. Her presence translated naturally to film, where she brought the same physical command and emotional clarity to the screen. She had already made a striking impression as the acid queen in Tommy, but the 1980s resurgence gave that screen work new resonance. In Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome, she portrayed Auntie Entity, a ruler whose power rested on intelligence and control rather than brute force. The role mattered because it aligned with her lived narrative. Turner was not cast as an ornament or novelty. She embodied authority within a genre dominated by male archetypes. The accompanying theme song, We Don't Need Another Hero, released on August 6, 1985, reinforced that alignment, linking her screen presence to the ethos of self-determination she was projecting on stage. Live performance cemented the comeback. The Private Dancer Tour, which began in February 1985, demonstrated stamina and command night after night. Turner was presented as unapologetically adult, combining strength and glamour without dilution. Recognition followed at the 27th Annual Grammy Awards on the 26th of February 1985, where she won 3 Grammys, including Record of the Year. What truly changed, however, was power. Turner was now choosing collaborators, shaping presentation, and setting terms. The comeback did not erase the past or depend on nostalgia. It established a new phase that stood on its own merits and reset the industry's assumptions about age, gender, and longevity. In the decades that followed her resurgence, Tina Turner gradually shifted her focus from proving herself to protecting what she had built. Success had given her freedom, and she was determined not to surrender it again. Touring remained central to her life for many years, not out of obligation, but choice. Her shows became celebrations of endurance and joy, rather than demonstrations of survival. A significant transformation in Turner's inner life had begun earlier and deepened over time. In the mid-1970s, during one of the most precarious periods of her life, she had turned to Buddhist practice, specifically Nichiren Buddhism. What began as a tool for coping became a spiritual framework that shaped how she understood suffering, resilience, and agency. Turner spoke openly about chanting as a source of discipline and grounding, crediting it with helping her rebuild not only her career, but her sense of self. Faith, for her, was not passive consolation. It was an active practice tied to responsibility and action. In 1986, she met German music executive Erwin Bach, and a relationship formed that offered stability without control. The couple eventually settled in Küsnacht, near Zurich, Switzerland, where Turner would spend the remainder of her life largely away from the pressures of the American entertainment industry. Switzerland offered privacy and calm, conditions she had rarely experienced earlier. In 2013, the same year that she and Erwin Bach married after 27 years together, she became a Swiss citizen, formally closing one chapter of her life while remaining globally recognized. The later years were not without difficulty. Turner faced significant health challenges, including a stroke in 2013 and a long battle with kidney disease. In 2017, she underwent a kidney transplant donated by her husband. Throughout these years, she remained candid about vulnerability, framing illness not as defeat, but as another test of endurance. Even as her public appearances became rare, her influence remained strong. Tina Turner died on the 24th of May, 2023, at the age of 83. Tributes emphasized not only her musical achievements, but her survival, independence, and refusal to be defined by harm. Yet her legacy is larger than resilience alone. She demonstrated that freedom could be reclaimed, that authority could be rebuilt, and that reinvention need not erase the past to transcend it. Turner's life stands as evidence that strength is not loudness, and freedom is not escape. It is the ability to choose, deliberately and repeatedly, who you are allowed to become. That brings us to the end of this episode of Compact Biographies, part of the Compact Histories Network. If you enjoyed it, please follow or subscribe wherever you're listening so you don't miss any future episodes, and consider leaving a rating or review, as it really helps new listeners find the show. You can find more episodes at compactbiographies.com, where you can also explore our other podcasts covering history, warfare, disasters, mysteries, and true crime. You can also follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Pinterest. Finally, please consider supporting the show directly by buying us a coffee. Head on over to compacthistories.com/biographiescoffee to see how. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you next time.